Hello everyone, and today we take up one unit of our short stories. Short stories, your book is Echoes, and today we begin with the unit The Chinese Statue by Jeffrey Archer. And somewhere a story written by Jeffrey Archer is made all the more interesting when we consider that we are dealing with a very contemporary author. Interesting even further because it's a contemporary author dealing with a storyline where he'll delve into something of the past. And in this particular story, he positions beautifully the past and the present. That's the structure of the story. First, an overview. Like always, let's first get into what the story is all about. This story opens up in present times at Sotheby's, Bond Street, where there's an auction going on and a very beautiful piece of Ming art. It's a statue, the statue of Emperor Kung, that is up for sale. It's up for bidding, and it's been brought by one Alex Heathcote. So the statue is put up there, and the narrator, who is in that scenario, who's perhaps sitting in the hall, he is very intrigued by the statue and decides to look into the origins of it. Who owned it first and what happened thereafter? How did the Ming statue come into the auction hall at all? From there, the story moves into something of the past. So the past deals with one Sir Alexander Heathcote, some generations back. Now, Sir Alexander Heathcote had been in the diplomatic services. He had served in very many capacities. And as the story begins, we find him in the position of an ambassador to China at the time of Empress Sushi. And he goes there as an ambassador, and he's very happy to go to China on this new assignment that he has been given. More because he is extremely interested in Ming art and the art of the Ming dynasty, and the thought that he can actually go to a place where the Ming dynasty had flourished and perhaps get to see firsthand beautiful rare pieces of art artifacts. This is a huge thing for him. So he goes there, he starts working, and he developed this habit of during his weekends or time off, he would take a Mandarin, a person speaking in the local language, as an assistant of sorts, as an interpreter actually, with him when he would go to the countryside. And he'd go and look up the place, the people, see if he could find traces of art, craftsmanship. On one such trip, he goes to the village of Ha Li Chuan, and he comes across this craftsman who is also a connoisseur of art. He's also fascinated by all things old, traditional, the intricate craftsmanship, and he has this hut, a small dwelling, which is filled with figurines and all kinds of works of art. Sir Alexander Heathcote is delighted. He watches everything, and then the craftsman, Yung Li, tells him that he has a small statue of the Ming dynasty, which has been in his household for generations. And he says he'll be delighted to show it to Sir Alexander Heathcote. When he shows him the statue, Sir Alexander Heathcote can't believe it. He's actually seeing a Ming statue, beautifully, intricately carved, and it's a relic of, a remnant of the Ming dynasty. Involuntarily, Sir Alexander Heathcote, while appreciating that piece of art, says, "I wish it were mine." And here the story goes on to a new dimension altogether. Apparently, there was this old Chinese tradition according to which if a visitor, a guest, asked for something, the owner would grow in the eyes of his people by giving it to the visitor. So, Yung Li had really no option but to follow that Chinese tradition and offer that piece to Sir Alexander. Sir Alexander was mortified. He had just made a passing comment. He had never expected that he would actually get that statue. Well, but he had to abide by Chinese customs because Yung Li would have been very, very demoralized, upset, distressed if he had not lived up to his country's traditions. However, when he's coming back with the statue, his Mandarin tells him that there's another sub part to that tradition. If a guest feels very obliged by the honor shown to him or overwhelmed by a gift, he ideally should return the favor within 1 calendar year. At this, Sir Alexander smiles. He's found now a way to repay this huge gift. He researches on the Ming statue and finds out that the cost of that statue comes up to about 3 years' salary of his. But he doesn't hesitate. He takes the money out from his bank, and within 1 year, he gets a house built for Yung Li in a village very close to where Yung Li lived, where he had wanted to spend his old age days of retirement. And he gifts that house to Yung Li. Thereafter, he comes back. He feels very satisfied having met this traditional requirement. And then he comes back to England, to Yorkshire, to spend his days in retirement. The Ming statue remained in his household, and he made this will wherein he indicated that each generation should pass on the Ming statue to the firstborn of the next generation. And nobody was supposed to sell it unless the family name, the honor, was at stake. Thereafter, the story traces the movement of that Ming statue from one generation to the other, and it goes into a kind of meandering kind of storyline where it goes from here to there to here to there, and comes right back each time to the household. I mean, it's within the family, sometimes on public display, sometimes within the house itself, and so on, till we come to where the story began. Generations later, it is Alex Heathcote. Alex Heathcote is a typical spoilt brat. He'd lost his parents early in life. He was reckless, a little too adventurous, had a very warped sense of values, he was selfish. He didn't think about anything or anyone much. And he recklessly took to gambling. And as is often the case, he gambled away all his fortunes. Somewhere, maybe at the back of his mind, there was this notion that I have that Ming statue, which is priceless, and I can always use that if I come to a serious crisis. Well, he got into a serious crisis. His debts accumulated to such an extent that the debtors, after initial calls and reminders and warnings, absolutely threatened him. Threatened him with physical harm, bodily injury. That's where Alex Heathcote absolutely lost his nerve and decided, well, now family honor is at stake, and as he has heard and has been told, the Ming statue could be sold if family honor was at a stake. That's when he decides to take the Ming statue to Sotheby's to put it up for auction. He was sure that it would fetch a very handsome price, and he would not only be able to pay off all his debts, he would also have a tidy sum kept aside for later, to carry on with his life, to carry on with his wayward life. He was still thinking of that. He would still go ahead with gambling. He hadn't learned any lesson, looks like. So he gave that statue up for sale and was told that he had to come back after a few days after the real value of it had been ascertained, determined. When he comes back, to his horror, he's told that the Ming statue is a fake. What was supposed to be a family heirloom, what was supposed to be an antique which is priceless, turned out to be a fake, and was at best worth only 200 pounds. And he was thinking in terms of huge money. Absolutely defeated in his purpose, Alex Heathcote thinks that he's got no way out now. This was his last bet. So he's got no way out. Perhaps he'll commit suicide. At which point the person in the auction house tells him, "Sir, what do you want to do with the base?" The statue had a base. The base was not part of the original statue. It had been fixed to it. And he carelessly said, "What about it?" So he says, "The base is unique. It's priceless. It's a real work of art. And the base is sold at 22,000 guineas. That's about roughly 20 lakh Indian rupees. So the story ends on that very interesting juncture where what he thought to be priceless turned out to be fake, and what he hadn't even given a thought to or glance to, that's what fetched him the real money. This is the overview of the story, The Chinese Statue. Now, from here, we should look at possible questions. The storyline is simple, yet it's got certain layers to it. And when we talk about layers, we first talk about the structure of the story itself. So, we'll follow our usual pattern where I subdivide my matter to you into subheadings. Subheadings always make it easier for you to attempt questions on. For instance, there'll be a question, or maybe you could take out your notebooks at this juncture and take down some jottings. And there's a question often asked as to how did the statue reach Sotheby's auction house? This is a subheading. How did the statue reach Sotheby's auction house? And associated with this very question is also another subheading. I mean, it's the same subheading. The matter is the same for both. The subheading is, what is the narrative methodology used, or what is the setting of the story, or is there any particular style in which this story is written? Now start taking down. We could call it setting. Our typical subheading could now be simply setting. Setting is equal to how the statue reached Sotheby's auction house. So the story is set at two different locations and at two different time periods. It follows the technique of a nested fiction, N-E-S-T-E-D, like a nest. Nested fiction, or a story within a story. In such a literary device, very often there is a core story and an outer story. The outer story is often called the frame story. In the Chinese statue, in this story, the frame story involves the incident that happens at Sotheby's auction house. Here, a delicate piece of ivory is being auctioned. It is categorized as specimen number lot 103. Now, specimen number lot 103 could come within inverted commas, indicating that it is straight taken from your text, and it is one of the key areas. The catalogue indicated that the statue had been purchased at Halichuan, a village in China, in 1871, and that it was the property of a gentleman. The property of a gentleman also comes within inverted commas. Here what tends to happen is at auction houses, perhaps they go by the privacy issue, they don't give details. So property of a gentleman would suffice. Carry on. This makes the narrator anxious to know the details of the statue, and he does some research, which then forms the content of the core story. So we did the frame story in a way. Now we go to the core story, and here is where we break paragraph 2. The events of the core story take place in 1871 in Peking. The incident takes place in Halichuan village. Write it this way: H capital H-A, L capital L-I, C capital C-H-U-A-N, Halichuan. It's a village at a distance of about 50 miles from Peking. At that point, Sir Alexander was appointed as the British ambassador in China during the reign of Empress Sushi. You spell it this way: TZU S capital SHI. Sir Alexander, who was interested in the art of the Ming dynasty, often visited the Chinese countryside around Peking. On one such trip, he came to a village and came across a craftsman. The craftsman showed him a beautiful statue of Emperor Kung. He also mentioned that it was a true piece of Ming art, M-I-N-G, Ming art, and had been in his family for generations. Sir Alexander got the statue from the craftsman as a gift and took it with him to his native place in Yorkshire. Sir Alexander retired from his job and went to live in Yorkshire. Thereafter, we again change paragraphs and move ahead. Sir Alexander did a detailed research on the Ming statue in the British Embassy's extensive library in Peking, and he found out the real value of the statue, which was equal to his salary of 3 years. Sir Alexander also remembered that he had to honor the age-old Chinese tradition of having to repay any big favor done to him within 1 calendar year. Exactly a year later, Sir Alexander went along with his Mandarin to the craftsman. They all went to the hills above the village. In this region, Sir Alexander gifted a beautiful house to the craftsman, Yung Lee, the name of the craftsman, Yung Lee, one word, Yunglee, to repay him in kind for the beautiful statue which the craftsman had gifted him. And now we connect with the present. Change paragraph here and write: it was this statue which remained for generations with the descendants of Sir Alexander. The latest descendant, Alex Heathcote, fell into big financial losses and decided to finally sell off the heirloom. That is how the statue reached the Sotheby's auction house. With this, we pause with this subheading. Keep one thing in mind: a subheading is indicative of a question, but one subheading is not one answer alone. A couple of subheadings taken together, maybe sometimes 3 subheadings taken together, would constitute an ideal ISC answer, meriting 20 marks. We also have questions which are broken into parts, 6, 6, 8. In that kind of scenario, this subheading could merit 8 marks. So you have both ways of dealing with the matter.